Imagine this scenario. It is 2 o'clock in the morning. The wind is howling outside, creating that low, terrifying whistle against your windows. The temperature has plummeted to minus 20 degrees. Suddenly, the hum of the refrigerator stops. The streetlights go dark. The silence in your house becomes deafening. The power grid has failed. Your furnace, which was the only thing standing between you and the freezing void outside, is now just a useless pile of metal. You have exactly 12 hours. That is the timeline physics gives you before your own home begins to kill you. You are not trying to heat your entire house anymore. That is a fantasy that will get you killed. Your mission has shrunk to a single goal: heat one room, keep your core temperature stable, and survive until the sun comes up. Most people in this situation panic. They rush to solutions that seem logical, but are actually fatal. They try to burn things indoors without ventilation. They rely on inefficient heat sources. They scramble. And sadly, statistics show that most people die not from the cold itself, but from their desperate, uneducated attempts to fight it. But you? You are going to be different. You are not going to survive on luck. You are going to survive on physics. You are going to use a specific set of supplies that cost less than $75, combined with a fundamental understanding of thermodynamics, to create a microclimate that keeps you and your family safe. No carbon monoxide poisoning. No burning the house down. Just pure, undeniable science. Let us break down the reality of what happens when the grid collapses in the dead of winter. It isn't just about being uncomfortable. It is a race against time. Your house is essentially a leaky bucket, and heat is the water pouring out of it. When the furnace dies, that heat escapes through every crack, every window pane, and every uninsulated wall. Your thermometer reads 58 degrees now, but it is dropping by 2 degrees every single hour. Do the math. In 6 hours, you will be seeing your breath in your living room. In 12 hours, without intervention, hypothermia begins its silent, deadly work on your body. The shivering starts. Violent, uncontrollable shaking as your muscles desperately try to generate heat. Your brain functions begin to deteriorate. You stop thinking clearly. You might even feel a sudden paradoxical wave of heat that makes you want to take off your clothes, a terrifying final symptom before the end. Why do people fail to survive this? Because they focus on the wrong side of the equation. They obsess over generating more heat. They think, I need a fire, or I need a heater. But the secret to survival isn't generation, it is insulation. Let me repeat that because it is the most critical concept you will learn today. Insulation beats generation every single time. Your body is a biological furnace. Even at rest, you are generating about 100 watts of heat energy constantly. In a standard 70-degree room, that is enough to maintain your equilibrium. But when the ambient temperature drops below 50 degrees, that 100 watts isn't enough. The cold air sucks the heat out of you faster than your metabolism can produce it. If you try to eat more food to burn more calories, you still can't keep up. The math doesn't work. Physics does not care about your comfort. Physics only cares about equilibrium. Energy always flows from high concentration to low concentration. Heat always flows to cold. It will relentlessly pull the warmth from your body until you and the room are the same temperature, and in this scenario, that temperature is lethal. So, stop trying to heat the air that is constantly escaping. Stop trying to fight the laws of thermodynamics with brute force. Instead, use them to your advantage. The solution is to trap the heat you already have. Every single degree of heat you prevent from escaping is one less degree your tired, freezing body has to replace. This brings us to the first hour. The golden hour. The power has just gone out. You realized it's not coming back on anytime soon. Do not panic. Do not start grabbing random blankets. You need a strategy. Your first move is to shrink your world. Forget the living room. Forget the kitchen with its open spaces and cold tile floors. You need to pick the smallest, most defensible room in your house. Usually, a small bedroom is ideal. This is now your survival capsule. You are going to seal this room like your life depends on it, because it does. Grab that heavy-duty plastic sheeting you bought for pennies compared to the cost of a heater. Tape it over the windows, but don't just tape it flat against the glass. You want to create an air gap. Trap a layer of dead air between the glass and the plastic. Why? Because dead air is one of the best insulators in existence. It is free, it is invisible, and it is incredibly effective. That stagnant air slows down the transfer of heat from your room to the freezing glass. Next, attack the doors. Stuffed towels, old clothes, anything you have under the door gap. Seal the perimeter. Then, look at the walls. If you have spare blankets, hang them up against the exterior walls. You are essentially building a room within a room, a soft, insulated fortress designed to hoard every calorie of heat. If you have 2 people in a sealed, insulated 10 by 10 foot room, their combined body heat alone, that 200 watts of energy, can raise the room temperature by 5 to 8 degrees. That is without lighting a single candle or burning a single log. Just biology and insulation working in harmony. Add those layers of plastic and blankets over the windows, and you gain another 3 to 5 degrees. Suddenly, while it is -20 outside and your neighbor's large living room is freezing at 45 degrees, your survival capsule is holding steady at a survivable 65 degrees. Your neighbor is burning through his limited supply of firewood, watching his breath fog up, terrified. You are sitting in your insulated box, rationing your energy and waiting it out. This is the power of preparation over panic. Now that you have secured your perimeter and turned your room into an insulated fortress, it is time to talk about active heat management. But remember, we are not talking about building a bonfire in your bedroom. We are talking about thermal mass. Think of thermal mass as a battery, but instead of storing electricity, it stores heat. And the best, most accessible material for this is likely sitting in your kitchen right now: water. Water has an incredibly high specific heat capacity. That is just a fancy way of saying it takes a lot of energy to heat it up, but once it is hot, it holds on to that energy like a miser holding on to gold. It releases that warmth slowly, over hours, which is exactly what you need when the temperature drops. If you have any warning before the grid goes down, even just 30 minutes, fill every plastic bottle you can find with hot water. Milk jugs, soda bottles, sturdy water containers. Fill them up. Each gallon of water heated to 160 degrees holds roughly 600 BTUs of heat energy. That might not sound like much compared to a furnace, but in your sealed, insulated 10 by 10 capsule, it is a game changer. 4 1-gallon jugs of hot water give you 2,400 BTUs of stored heat. That is enough to keep that small space habitable for 3 to 4 hours as the water slowly cools down. It acts like a radiator that requires no electricity and emits no fumes. But here's the pro tip that separates the survivors from the statistics. Don't just leave those bottles sitting in the corner. Use them to heat your blood. Place the warm bottles against your core areas, under your armpits, between your thighs, and against your lower back. Why these spots? Because major blood vessels run close to the surface there. By warming the blood in these arteries, you are effectively warming your entire circulatory system. The warm blood travels to your extremities, keeping your fingers and toes functional. You are using your body's own pump to distribute the heat from your thermal battery. Now let's address the elephant in the room: the life hacks you see on the internet, specifically candles. You have probably seen the videos claiming you can heat your entire home with a few tea lights and a flower pot. Let's do the math, because math saves lives. A single tea light candle generates about 30 BTUs of heat per hour. An average uninsulated room needs about 3,000 BTUs per hour just to maintain a comfortable temperature in freezing weather. Do the division. You would need 100 tea lights burning constantly to heat that room. But here is the problem. 100 candles burning in a sealed room isn't a heater, it is a suicide machine. They consume the oxygen you need to breathe. Worse, they create a massive fire hazard. One accidental bump in the dark, one blanket catching a spark, and your survival shelter becomes a trap. So, are candles useless? No, but you have to use them with an understanding of physics. This is where the terracotta pot trick actually has merit, if, and only if, you understand what it really does. It is not a room heater, it is a personal radiant heater. By placing a small terracotta flower pot upside down over 4 tea lights propped up on bricks for airflow, and then placing a larger pot over the small one, you create a thermal engine. The candles heat the inner pot, which heats the air trapped between the pots, which then heats the outer pot. The terracotta absorbs that thermal energy and radiates it outward. Instead of the heat from the candles shooting straight up to the ceiling where it does you no good, the pots capture it and radiate it sideways, towards your body. It generates about 120 BTUs. It won't heat the room, but if you sit close to it, wrap your hands around it, it will warm you. It keeps your morale up and your fingers nimble. It is a psychological boost as much as a physical one. But with fire comes the greatest enemy of winter survival. It isn't the cold, it is the silent killer. Carbon monoxide. When people get desperate, they make bad decisions. They bring the propane patio heater inside. They drag the charcoal grill into the living room. They run a kerosene heater in a room they just spent hours sealing airtight with plastic and duct tape. This is a fatal error. Combustion requires oxygen. In a sealed room, the flame consumes the oxygen you need. And as the oxygen levels drop, the flame burns dirty, producing carbon monoxide. CO is colorless. It is odorless. You cannot taste it. It bonds to your red blood cells 200 times faster than oxygen does. It essentially suffocates you from the inside out while your lungs are full of air. Here's the terrifying part. You won't feel like you are suffocating. You will just feel tired. You might get a slight headache or feel a bit dizzy. You will think, I'm just exhausted from the stress. I'll lay down for a bit. You go to sleep feeling warm and comfortable, and you never wake up. Congratulations, you just turned your survival sanctuary into a gas chamber. Generators are the same story. Every year, families die because they ran a generator in the attached garage, thinking it was ventilated enough. It wasn't. The gas seeps through the walls, turning bedrooms upstairs into silent tombs. Your body acts as a biological warning system for the cold. You shiver, you hurt, you know you are in danger. But your body has zero defense against carbon monoxide. It gives you no warning until it is too late. So, rule number 1 of active heating. Ventilation is non-negotiable. If you burn anything, propane, kerosene, wood, you must have airflow. But airflow defeats your insulation strategy. This is the paradox. That is why, for the first 12 to 24 hours, relying on body heat, thermal mass, water bottles, and insulation is infinitely safer than trying to introduce fire into your sealed environment. While you manage the environment, you must also manage the machine, your body. And the most effective solution is also the most boring one. It is called layering. But don't just throw on 5 cotton t-shirts. That is amateur hour. You need a system. Start with a base layer, thermal underwear. Its job isn't just to keep you warm, it is to wick moisture away from your skin. In a survival situation, sweat is death. If you sweat and then stop moving, that moisture cools on your skin and sucks heat away 25 times faster than air. Next, the insulating mid-layer. Wool, fleece, down. This layer is the trap. It catches the warm air radiating off your body and holds it in a pocket around you. Finally, a wind-breaking outer layer if there are drafts. You are creating multiple dead air spaces close to your skin. And please, wear a hat indoors. The old myth that you lose 40% of your heat through your head isn't exactly true, but your scalp has a massive blood supply and very little fat insulation. Leaving your head bare in a 40-degree room is like leaving the radiator cap off. It looks stupid to wear a beanie at the dinner table? Maybe, but vanity dies the moment your core temperature drops below 95 degrees. Let's talk about what happens if you fail. Let us look at the timeline of hypothermia so you recognize the enemy when it walks through the door. Hour 6. The room hits 45 degrees. Your body enters vasoconstriction. It pulls blood away from your hands and feet to protect the vital organs, heart, lungs, brain. Your fingers turn white, then blue. You try to make a fist to grab a water bottle, but your hand won't respond. The muscles refuse commands. You feel clumsy. This is the first sign your body is sacrificing pieces of you to save the whole. Hour 9. The shivering begins. Not just a little tremble. Violent, uncontrollable shaking. Your teeth chatter so hard your jaw aches. This is your body's last-ditch attempt to generate heat through muscle movement. It works, but the cost is astronomical. It burns calories at an extreme rate. If you aren't eating high-energy foods, shivering will burn through your energy reserves in hours. Hour 12. Room temperature is 38 degrees. Condensation on the windows freezes into intricate, beautiful frost patterns. Inside your body, things are getting ugly. Core temperature drops to 93. Confusion sets in. You stop making rational decisions. You might feel apathetic. You might just want to sleep. Hour 18. The most terrifying phase. Core temperature hits 90 degrees. Your brain stem begins to malfunction. This leads to a phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing. As the muscles that constrict your blood vessels fail from exhaustion, a sudden surge of hot blood rushes from your core to your frozen skin. You feel an intense, burning heat. You feel like you are on fire. In your delirium, you strip off your clothes. This is how rescue teams often find victims, frozen to death, curled in a corner, completely naked. It is the brain's final, cruel joke before shutdown. Unconsciousness follows. Then, death. But that is not your story. While your neighbor with the fireplace survives because he understood ventilation, and your other neighbor dies because he poisoned himself with a camping stove, you survived because you respected the physics. You survived because you sealed a small room. You used insulation to trap heat. You managed your body heat intelligently. You understood that surviving the cold isn't about generating more heat than physics allows. It is about preventing loss. The harsh reality is that all of this requires preparing before the grid fails. You cannot buy thermal underwear when the stores are closed. You cannot tape up windows when your fingers are too frozen to hold the tape. The list is simple: heavy-duty plastic sheeting, duct tape, thermal underwear, 0-degree sleeping bags, water bottles, tea lights, and terracotta pots. The total cost is roughly $75. The grid doesn't collapse on a schedule. Winter doesn't wait for you to get your paycheck. When the power dies, you have 6 to 12 hours before the cold becomes lethal. If you spend those hours panic buying supplies, you are already behind the curve. So here is the choice: $75 in preparation versus a high probability of hypothermia because you assumed electricity would always work. Most people choose wrong because preparing feels paranoid. It feels silly. Until the grid fails. Until the temperature drops. And suddenly, the paranoid people are the only ones staying warm. When the grid freezes at midnight and your furnace dies, you will remember this. You will remember I told you exactly what to buy. You will remember you didn't buy it because it felt unnecessary. You will remember it around hour 6 when the shivering becomes violent. You will remember it around hour 12 when you can't think straight anymore. Winter doesn't care what you remember. Physics doesn't care that you meant to prepare. And your frozen body doesn't care that you would have spent the $75 if you had known. But you did know. You are reading this now. Choose correctly or don't. Either way, thermodynamics doesn't change for you.